This is the first time I'm doing it, so I'm not entirely sure how the whole process will go. All right, seems that we are live on YouTube. And I think this is
like we are.
Okay. So, morning, everyone. Evening. All right. So, hi, Dennis. For this afternoon, at least it's on my side, afternoons. I will be presenting, and then Chloe is with us. Yeah. So Jeff and Ash will be around for this particular show, and I guess they will take it in a very different direction. So I'll be sharing some things on my side, which I think are a bit generic, which would be more suitable, I guess, for the traders that is viewing. Yeah, so with that, let me share the screens. And I have to wonder where's my screen. Okay. So all right, so I can see on YouTube you have seen my trading view screen, and let me dive straight into that. I won't be going into any specific strategy trading style. To me, I don't think it's that much useful for the other traders who might be trading their own things. Yeah. So instead, I'll be doing one of my favorite way of approaching the market is actually by doing overview. Yeah, by looking at the currency indices. That's my current way of trading nowadays. Yeah, so with that, and that will actually establish my bias for which pair is strong or weak, down or weak. Yeah. So I'll just give a quick one, but not that quick, and then I'll pass it over to Chloe, and then you'll come back to me to see which particular currency I'm looking at. Yeah. So the first one right off the bat, I'm looking at the Euro currency indices. Yeah. So for those who are not familiar with the currency indices, it's just the Euro against a basket of other currencies. Yeah, so it's not Euro USD or Euro Aussie. Yeah, so it's just mainly Euro against a basket of other currencies. So that will give, to me, that will give me a good indication of whether the Euro itself is strengthening or weakening. Yeah, so that's how I approach the market. So for the Euro index, price has really bounced off nicely off 112, and that's do noting that recently price is hitting a strong horizontal level at 113, but like I said, this is like I mentioned now, rather like I suspect this is just a temporary support resistance area. So I think price still have a very good chance of actually appreciating all the way to 115. So that means anything Euro against anything, I do expect to strengthen in the midterm. That means for the coming months, or rather 4 weeks. That's about it. So just looking at this, I'm going to say my bias for Euro is going to be strong Euro. Looking at the Swiss price, again, very similar to Euro. You can see that it bounces off the very recent support level, and that it's just a bearish bar recently. Now, we can suspect that price might just slightly weaken to this horizontal level. Oops, wrong line. Let me erase that. That's not what I want. Yeah, over here, then you can see even for today's bar, it's just at this moment it's just a doji. So I have no reason to think that price will actually weaken all the way to 105. Instead, there's a good possibility that it might bounce off 106 and then continue its good journey to 108. So in that sense, Euro and Swiss is still bullish for me. As for Kiwi, same story. Very nice bounce off 64, break the temporary resistance level. Now, in the lower time frame, I do suspect that it will actually continue weakening for today, and then it will bounce off this level. Yeah, so overall, I'll still be bullish for Kiwi. Now, something that's worrying me about pound is that on the longer term view, I will still think that the pound will appreciate. Yeah, simply because we can see that there's already a higher low. over here. Yeah, I don't place much trust on trend line myself. It's just that when it happens, I do tend to notice it. Yeah, but at the same time, you can see that this is a horizontal region that we can't ignore. Yeah, I can see that price actually bounce off 1, 2, break, retest, come down again. Yeah, so in lieu of that for pound, long term, that means anything from 3 months from now, I will still think that pound will appreciate, but just that for this coming 2 weeks, I do think that it will actually weaken. Yeah, where will it weaken? That will be hard to say, because even if I take the support region from the past, this is too narrow a space that technically speaking, I can't trade off either of these spaces. So it will be really adopt a wait and see approach for pound. As for yen, yen is to me, you can see from the past, it is a very narrow range. Yeah. But at least for this coming week, these few days, I would think that it will continue weakening down all the way to the 92.5 regions. Yeah. So pound is unknown, yen definitely on the bearish mode. Canadian currency, I still think that it will hit the trend line. Yeah. But for the past 3 weeks, you can see that price is actually ranging. Yeah. So it has hit the top of the range. I don't think that it will actually come down to the range. Yeah. So it might actually bounce off the trend line. That means it has very, very little buffer space for us to play around. Yeah. So CAD is already another currency whereby I might not be trading much. Not very clear direction for me. So for the Aussie, you can see that for the past 2 weeks, in a very tight range. Yeah, it has hit the top of 70. This happens to be a very nice round number. So I do think that it will depreciate at least all the way to 68 regions. So for this coming week, I think the Australian dollar will probably depreciate down for good measure. And then comes to the dollar index. So dollar index, for the past 2 weeks or even 3 weeks, I do maintain that in the long run, I do suspect that the US dollar will depreciate, and then the current behavior of the past 2 weeks does confirm my suspicion. Now for this week, we can see that price is actually hugging very, very tightly on the past support regions. Now it might actually have a technical rebound all the way up to the trend line. A deeper one will be up to the previous resistance level, support level I mean, yeah, and then continues its merry way downwards. Yeah. But I do maintain that US dollar, I will still be trying to see if I have any opportunity of shorting it. Yeah. That's my overall outlook for this week. So with that, I'll come back with specific pairs later. With that, I'll pass the screen to Chloe.
Cool, thanks, Lloyd. Let me just grab the screen here. All right, I'm going to go through a few things that I'm looking at on the lower time frames. For any of you guys who are trading lower time frames, this might be of interest to you, hopefully. I'm starting off with pound Swiss. Looking at the daily time frame, I know I did say I'd be seeing what is moving on the lower time frames, but I always start up at the daily time frame anyway. And the daily time frame on pound Swiss, I mean, it has been pretty rangy of late. It's not the best, strongest trend I've ever seen in my life. However, I do have a lower high here and a lower low, and I'm looking at price having bounced from the monthly pivot just yesterday. So that for me is a bearish signal. And the fact that price has continued lower than yesterday's bar is another bearish signal. So in the short term, at least, I'm not necessarily, I don't necessarily have a very long-term view of this going a million miles, but in the short term for lower time frame trading, I'm looking at pound Swiss to the downside. So it's possibly likely to be the 15-minute time frame that I might catch something short here. The key to this is patience. Just because I'm looking at a lower time frame doesn't mean I'm going to be getting into a trade in the next 15 minutes. What I do need to wait for is I need to wait for a pullback. I need to wait for a retracement before I can get in. And I would love to see a retracement up to this level. This is a bit of a horizontal support level it's become since basically being the low of yesterday just down here. It then sat at that level for a few hours before breaking through. So I'd love to see price come back to around that level, and then I'd be looking for a short opportunity. And in terms of targeting, I really can go back up to the daily time frame. There isn't a huge amount of support in the way. The main level that I'm looking at is this level down here that I've marked in blue. That is, last time price hit that level and changed direction, it was a really, really strong change of direction from back towards the middle to end of last year. So even though price has been through that level and smashed through that level since then, this is the level that I'm looking at ideally for a target. But until that point, of course, I will be just keeping an eye on the general motion of the market and any kind of retracements. If I see any spiky or kind of dodgy price action, then I will be looking to probably take profits early, because the markets I've found over the last month or so have really been running less than usual. So the trends do tend to start, the moves do tend to start pretty well, but then they tend to very quickly turn into ranges again. So what I don't want to do is be sitting around in a trade that's ranging for ages. I'd rather just take my money and look for the next opportunity. So that's the plan for pound Swiss. CAD Swiss is something else that I've been looking at. And again, just looking at the daily time frame, I mean, this is really, really rangy. It's really rubbish price action, to be honest with you. But what I'm looking at is the fact that yesterday was a bearish bar. Yes, it's green, but to me that's a bearish candle. It's got a long tail up here. So that's a rejection of the weekly pivot yesterday. And it's just sitting at the bottom here of where that range has been for quite some time, like 2 months or so now. Price hasn't been below this level. So if price can break down below this level, then that shows me clear lower highs, and it would then give me a clear lower low. And again, not looking for a huge target here. There's definite support in this area. Probably some support even higher up than that as well. And so I'm not looking for any trades to run a million miles, but I will be looking for short trades on this. And again, it's pretty much the same as the pound Swiss. I'm looking at both just because one might set up, both might set up. I can't really predict what is going to happen in terms of a setup for my strategy. So I am looking at both. I probably would only trade one of them, especially on the lower time frames. I do like to keep my risk contained when I'm trading on the lower time frames. I don't want to be in 10 trades at once, especially not with the same cross currency, so with Swiss in both of them. So I'll probably just take one, whichever one sets up first or best. And again, I'm looking ideally for price to pull back, retrace, preferably to this level here. This is again a level of support that formed. It's been like this the whole day. That's the level that now has just broken through about half an hour or so ago. So I'm looking ideally for price to come back up to that level and then test the level, and then I'll be looking to get into the market. So we shall have to just wait and see whether that happens or not. Those are the two things that I'm looking for trades on most closely. Whether they're going to set up during the duration of this show, it's possibly unlikely, because they do have quite a way to retrace. I need that to happen over several bars. What I don't want to see is a sudden move to the upside, indicating buyers strongly coming into the market, because I definitely wouldn't want to be getting in on the sell side there. But in the meantime, there are a couple of other things that I'm looking at, and it's generally today, I think, all about proximity to pivots. So whether that's the daily pivot or the weekly pivot or even the monthly pivot. I've got an overall bias, for example, Aussie CAD, even though this trend is looking very, very tired indeed, I still have an overall bias to the upside at the moment. It hasn't been retracing as strongly as, for example, Aussie Swiss. That's showing me no bullish price action whatsoever. It has just been moving sideways for a month, if not more. Whereas Aussie CAD, that is still, the buyers still are coming into the market at points. So I'm still looking to the upside on Aussie Swiss on the lower time frames. The lower time frames, simply because I can get potentially a decent reward to risk without having to ask price to run a million miles. So for example, on the daily time frame, if I were to enter a trade on the daily time frame, I'd actually need price to move a couple of hundred pips probably in order to just get me a decent profit. Whereas looking on the lower time frames, I could take a trade today, be out within an hour or two, make my money, and price could still continue almost ranging from there if that's what it plans to do. So we can see this range here. Ideally, what I'd like to see is if price can break out of any of these points here. These are my two main areas that I'm looking at here. So if price can break above this level, then I'd like to get in long, and I would take a trade up to that next level of resistance. If price comes down and retests the daily pivot, then I will also consider that, as long as I've got room to take a profit before this level. So that could be, again, I'd say most likely 15-minute time frame for me is what looks the best in terms of a retracement down to the daily pivot. So I'll be keeping an eye on that one, and I'm also keeping an eye on Aussie yen, pretty much because it's so close to the weekly pivot here. Again, on the daily time frame, really this is just moving sideways. So I'm clutching at straws, trying to find something to trade today, I think, but I am still bullish overall. I do still see bulls coming into the market at these higher lows. There is definitely a level of resistance up here that price has struggled at. It hit that level last month. It's hit that level a few times this month. So that's the level I have to be cautious of. But in terms of looking at the 15-minute time frame, it's a long way away. So there still is the possibility of getting into a trade and out of that trade before we get anywhere near that level of resistance. It will all depend on how price reacts at the weekly pivot, and at the moment it doesn't look fantastic. So unless this bar turns into a low test bar, then I probably will stop looking at that particular currency pair for the rest of the day. I was only interested if it was going to form a higher low and a bounce at the weekly pivot there. EuroCAD is something else that I'm considering looking at, and again, we can clearly see this level of resistance. It happens to be at the monthly R1 level. Where the level of resistance is not really too important, but we can clearly see price struggling to get through this level. So I'm definitely not interested in trading through the level. However, if price comes up and closes above this level, then that does give me options. So the options would be either to wait for price to move really nicely through this level and then come back down, cycle back down, retest this level, and then give me a trading opportunity to the upside. That could be one option. Alternatively, because of the bullishness of price right now and the fact that it's potentially pushing through this level, is actually, it's not just a level that I've picked out on the 15-minute time frame, although it is clear to see on the 15-minute time frame, but it's a level that has been in place for basically since March. This is the level that price has been range bound below since early March. So if price can push through here, then I might expect a pretty decent move to the upside. And for that reason, on the 15-minute time frame, I mean, this price action is just changing all the time, which you can expect on the 15-minute time frame. Had this current bar closed well above the level that I'm looking at, then I would have considered taking a long opportunity. Doesn't look that way at the moment, but we do still have 10 minutes left of the bar. So it's just going to be a little bit of a waiting game there. If price comes down, then I'm not really interested at all in trading into this level because it's such a strong level of resistance. But if price gets above there, then I'll be looking for long opportunities. Euro GBP is another one. We may have missed this for today, but price hasn't actually moved that far in the big scheme of things, which is why I'm still looking at it. And again, this is not the most beautiful, the strongest trend I've ever seen in my life. It's, price isn't doing much better than ranging. It is forming higher lows and higher highs. So that's why I'm looking to the upside. But again, if I do get into a trade, I'm not anticipating it running for a very, very long time. So price has already been on the move for today. It started this run much earlier on this morning. But again, if price can pull back, if price does pull back, and hopefully towards this previous high level, if it pulls back towards here and bounces at this point, then I'll be considering getting in long. And again, probably the 15-minute time frame is the one that is going to look best on that. I'll go up to the 30-minute as well to see if the 15-minute doesn't set up, then perhaps the 30-minute will. But I'll start off by looking at the 15-minute time frame there. So that's on my watch list for long. I've got pound Aussie on my watch list for short. Now, again, this is a trend that has been running for a long time. It started back at the end of March. Price has just been moving downwards ever since then. And gradually over the last month or so, this trend has been slowing down. And so my expectation would be for price to perhaps move down a little further, but I wouldn't be surprised if it gets caught up at this support level now, because we've seen a lot of interaction here with this support level in this previous low. So again, that leaves me unable to trade it on the daily time frame because the reward to risk just isn't there. I would need price to move too far to get me into profit. But on a lower time frame, for example, 15-minute, it could be an option. So again, this is going to depend on how the retracement looks, how strongly the bulls come into the market, because if the bulls smash their way into the market and make this cyclicity look uneven, then I won't be getting in. But it's on my watch list for short, just in case I do get a bit of a retracement and then an opportunity to trade that. Those are pretty much all of the currency pairs that I'm really focusing on the lower time frames. And I would say that pound Swiss and CAD Swiss are my top two picks. I am really very much hoping that they do pull back. They might not pull back, in which case for me it's probably going to be a case of close my computer and think about something else for the rest of the day and get prepared again for trading the lower time frames tomorrow. But I'll wait and see and plan for price to pull back at some point and then see if there's anything I can jump into there. The other thing that I always tend to look at the moment is gold. Simply because we have a strong uptrend on gold. The fundamental outlook of gold is bullish. And again, we've been in this move on the daily time frame for quite some time. It does look like it's been slowing down, but every time it's slowed down recently, it's then taken off again to the upside. So I'm not dismissing this as an option to find a long trade. It's just going to be a case of waiting for cyclicity. We've got a bit of ranging going on here. And with my strategy, I very, very rarely will get into a ranging market. But it's just going to be a case of waiting for cyclicity to resume and seeing if that happens to the upside. And I probably, if I'm looking at the lower time frames, I'm probably going to wait to see if price can get above today's daily pivot. And if it can get above today's daily pivot, then I am going to be looking for a retest of that and a potential long opportunity. And again, trading on the lower time frames, I'd be happy with quite a close target. I'd certainly be looking around this area. There's plenty of resistance around this area over here. So what I would have to see is I would have to see a bounce at the daily pivot, and then I'd have to see a good enough reward to risk to take, you know, hopefully at least a 2-to-1 reward to risk before this area. Then, of course, I would consider running the trade through that, but all the while just being cautious about the fact that for me, the last month, certainly, and the last few months, in fact, sometimes a trend will just start and then run for ages, but mostly I've found that because of the uncertainty still in the market, trends can start and price can pop out in the direction you expect, but then they don't run for as long as they certainly haven't been running for as long as I have expected mostly. So I'm more than happy to continue taking shorter targets just to make sure that I make the trade safe so that if price turns around, I'm not losing money, and also to make sure I'm banking money in case price starts to range or turn around before I'm necessarily expecting it. So that is going to be the process there. And again, if price here gets below the weekly pivot, then of course I'm no longer interested in buying. So that is pretty much what I'm looking at on the lower time frames. So I will hand back over to Lloyd, and perhaps he can shed some light on a few more focus things that he's looking at.
All right, thank you for that. Still not very familiar around the settings over here. I realized that I've muted my mic just now. It's kind of odd that I didn't hear it.
You were muted on my end. Yeah, I don't know how I would cope with controlling both Zoom and YouTube. So you're doing a great job.
Yeah, because I realized that you were speaking, but I hear nothing. I was like,
Oh, I see.
okay. Right. So with that, just now I was, Chloe, correct me if I'm wrong. Just now you were saying that you're looking for pound Swiss short and cat Swiss short. Am I right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So for those who are, I'll just use those two as an example. What Chloe is looking out for does correlate with what my currency analysis, indices analysis. As I mentioned, that Swiss, I'm looking for long opportunity. And then for pound, I did mention that it might actually fall down to the trend line. So it does fall in line with what she's looking for to short pound and then to long Swiss. Same for cat, but just that in this time round for cat, while I do suspect that it might drop down to the trend line, it has very little space to maneuver. Yeah. So this is how the strategies can tie in with the analysis. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'll immediately short pound or cat. Yeah, still need to tie in with your analysis. Now, let me look at some of the questions online. Is that Jimmy, pound cat pitchfork buy? Let me look at pound cats, how I would go about it. So for pound cat, the primary time frame that I'm trading is still 4 hours. Yeah. So pound cat, just to refresh my mind a bit. Yeah. So for pound cat, currently to me is both is weak. Yeah. It's tough for me to get in. Now, even but pound, I do think that it has a lot more space to actually fall than cat. Now, in lieu of that, I would say that I'll be very, very cautious when approaching pound cats for any positions. Yeah. So you can see that pound cat at least just I think from last week till now, yeah, it is on a uptrend. If I were to look for any long position for pound cat, I do maintain that I have to be very, very cautious about it. Is that I'll still wait for price to actually come off and bounce off 1.7. So that will be the prime position for me to buy. At this moment, I'm not looking for any long position as of yet. As you can see from the histogram, it's still weakening quite a fair bit. Yeah. So in order for me to go on a long position, at least I have to wait for the histogram. You can see here. Yeah. So I need to wait for it to have at least some kind of indication to me that the currency is actually strengthening up. Then I'll be much more confident to jump in. So what I mean by the currency strengthening is that for this recent example, you can see that pound is actually weakening. So you can see light greens. So over here, I won't be any interested in taking any long position until price has shown me a strong color greens. Then I'm more interested in jumping in. Yeah. As always, I do maintain that any traders who go with the indicators trading, we are usually later than the price action trader, but just that our signals are much more stronger in a sense. Yeah. I'm not saying that which one is better or which, but that's just my primary style of trading. Yeah. So that's my outlook for pound cats. Yeah. Need to wait for a fair bit more. Helen, what currencies is euro relative to? That one you have to check it out. But most of the major currencies, if I remember correctly, their weightage for USD is usually 50% or more. Yeah, that's about the region. I might be wrong. Yeah. But each of the major currencies, they have weightage for the other 7 major currencies. Yeah, just that the percentage are very different. Sanjay, DS1 and R1, I suspect you might be talking about the pivot squeeze strategy. I don't comment on any specific strategy that's related to Wave Rider when I'm doing a YouTube show. Apologies for that. Cat series H4 double bottom. Let me have a look at that. Wow. I won't be looking at this. I won't be really interested in looking at the cat series trading at double bottom. I can see that price is actually weakening for a fair bit at the moment. Yeah. But what I'm interested at is what does jump out at me at this moment is this. Yeah. Price is very much on a support region. Yeah. So this is the horizontal level that I'm looking at. So I won't be banking so much on the reversal anytime soon. Yeah, because as per what you can see from the histogram, price is weakening, and that it is on a very, very strong selling momentum. Yeah, so I won't be betting on the double bottom yet. Yeah. So instead, since that Swiss is strong at the moment and CAD is relatively weak, what I'll be betting again is for price to actually break this region, come back for a retest, then I'll go for short positions. Yeah, that will actually be a more viable way of attempting to actually short this. Now, if you look at the bigger picture, is that this is in fact a descending triangle. So in terms of chart pattern, I do place more emphasis on descending and ascending triangle. To me personally, I think that for chart pattern traders, or at least for my style of chart pattern trading, ascending and descending triangle does play a much more bigger role than double top and double bottom. Yeah. Because it does represent a compression of price. And then when it finally break, the longer the compression, and eventually when price break, the further the price will actually move. Yeah, so this has much more significance to me. So that's just my own analysis. Yeah. And then let me share a couple which I've highlighted just now according to the currency indices. Is that let me have a look at Euro USD. So for Euro USD, like I mentioned that I'm going to be bullish about Euro. So what I'm waiting for is for price to actually drop down to the previous horizontal level. Yeah, you can see from the histogram that price is still weakening. Yeah, just pending for a reversal price action and confirmed by histogram, then I'll be prepared to go long. Do understand that recently price has hit a double top. Yeah, so price might actually weaken further to the trend line. So this currency, I think there's a good opportunity to go long, just that we need to be patient for the time being. Euro 4 hour, yeah. So you can see that price is also still at current phase is still weakening. So really interested in placing a trade when price has dropped to previous resistance level. Yeah, you can see that ranging price broke up, come back for retest. That would be the perfect scenario for me to go in. Yeah. Price may very well not come to this level in the first place. Yeah, so we shall see how that goes. Yeah, but at least my bias for Euro Aussie is to go long. Aussie Swiss. Let me look at it. Aussie So always switch my biases to go short. So you can see on the 4-hour time frame, on the bigger picture, price is definitely ranging. Yeah. So what I'm waiting for will be our price. What happens is that you can see that price might be breaking this horizontal. Yeah. But once it's break, it will actually, I have very little space to maneuver to the next horizontal level. In fact, I highly doubt even if there's a setup that I will have a 1:1 risk to reward. Yeah, that's quite troubling to me. Yeah, so in lieu of that, I think my game plan for this will need to accommodate the current situation is that instead I'll wait for a higher low and then for price to actually break 0.65 before I attempt any short position. I think I can afford to wait since that Swiss is relatively strong at the moment and Aussie is weak. Yeah, so I can have the time to actually wait for a better setup. Yeah, there's no point for me to rush into a setup only for price to hit a strong horizontal level and to kick me out. The last pair that I'm looking at will be dollar Swiss. So dollar Swiss, you can see that on the daily time frame, price is developing to a very nice downtrend. Yeah. So on the H4, what I would prefer to see is for price. Let me see if I have a trend line here. Nope, the trend line will be broken. Okay, so this is actually what I would like to see. Oops. So if it's possible, I would prefer for price to actually retrace a bit more to the previous high and then to break downwards together with the trend line. Yeah, so that will be a trend line break. And then if the histogram confirms that I have a really bearish momentum, that will be the actually perfect timing for me to go in. Yeah. So I'm still very much going to short dollar Swiss, just pending for a good setup. Yeah, so those are the 4 currencies which I'm looking at for this week, which might have a good chance of setting up. Yeah, just need to wait for it. Okay. So pending that, let me look at any questions from YouTube. Aussie Cat. I have the last pair of it. Now, I don't rely on daily pivots for my intraday trading. Yeah, but I'll just have a look at Aussie Cat. Yeah, Alan. So I'm looking for Swiss to strengthen because of my previous analysis. So you can see that just price might be heading to a horizontal level and might possibly bounce off and strengthen all the way to, let me see, 108. So that's just a very simple analysis of the Swiss index. Aussie Cat is still very much a case of a week against a week. Usually I try to avoid trading those scenarios. Yeah, so if I look at the Aussie Cat H4 time frame, you can see that even the MACD histogram has shown that price has weakened quite a fair bit, yeah, since mid last week. Yeah, so in lieu of that, what I will be looking for in order to trade Aussie Cat, even if it does set up, I have to be very careful about it. I will still very much prefer for price to actually break 0.94, come back for a retest, then I will attempt a short position. Yeah. So this is quite a tight range for me to do anything about it at this moment. Remove this trend. Alright, so I guess that's all for this week. It is a relatively short session. I hope that you all benefit from it. So with that, thank you for joining us today, and I guess Jeff will be back tomorrow. So that's all for me. And thank you, Chloe.
No worries. That's all from me as well. Thanks for tuning in, guys. And yes, I believe Jeff hopefully will be back in tomorrow. So you will have some normality resumed to the YouTube show. So we'll speak to you soon. Cheers, everyone.
All right. Bye and take care. Goodbye.